Okay, so let's get started with our session for today. So welcome everyone. My name is Bethan Edwards and I am the Academic Director here at Specialist Language Courses. And in today's live lesson, we're going to look at Reading B and we're going to cover some tips and strategies. So before starting, just a few tips for our session today. I'd like to let you know that the session's being recorded. So during the session, feel free to take notes or screenshots, but just to let you know that we are recording it and we will be sharing it on our YouTube channel that you can see here on the screen. So don't forget to subscribe where you can find this session and other resources to help you with your OET journey. Second, to let you know how we're going to be using Zoom today. So we're going to be using the chat function. We'll use this for tasks during the class. We'll be using polls. So we'll launch a poll question and answer the questions by clicking on the answer that you want to choose and click submit. And then we'll talk through the answers. And then we have the question and answer function. So if you have a question throughout the session, if you click on the Q&A icon, type your question, and then I'll do my best to answer the questions at the end of the session today. Third, don't forget to register for the next session that is coming up next week. So the next session will be on Listening Bee for tips and strategies. Don't forget to register and we'll be putting the link in the chat box for you. Okay, so let's get started. So we are going to look at an overview of Reading B. We're going to look at ways for you to approach part B and some steps that you can follow to help you answer the questions. And we're also going to look at some study tips to help you when you're preparing. So a brief overview of OET reading. We have OET Reading A, in which you have 4 short texts and you have matching and gap fill questions. Then we come to Reading B. We have 6 short texts with 3 option multiple choice questions. And also Reading C. We have 2 longer texts. We'll be looking at Reading C in some of our later live sessions. So in Reading A, as you may know, you have 15 minutes. Then for B and C, you have 45 minutes. So these 2 sections of the reading are given to you at the same time, and you have 45 minutes in total. So let's come to our first quiz of today. So we're going to use the chat box. And I'd like to find out how much you already know about Reading B for those of you who've already started some of your OET preparation. So question number 1, in Reading B, how many questions do you need to answer? Type your answers into the chat box now. Okay, great. I can see a lot of you are familiar with the format of Reading B. So you're right. You need to answer 6 questions for Reading B. That's great. So you have 6 texts and you have 1 question per text. So 6 questions altogether. Okay, let's look at question number 2. How long is each text? So we're talking number of words. How many words or how long is each text roughly? Okay, great. So we've got a couple of answers in here. Okay, great. Okay. Good. So you're all in the right area. So each text is between 100 and 150 words. So this is what is meant when we're told that it is a short text. So between 100 and 150 words. Okay, question number 3. What type of texts are used in Reading B? So those of you who came to our Reading A session, live session, you'll know that Reading A are texts that are often used with patients. What about Reading B? Okay, so we've got a few different answers here. Most of you are on the right topic. So they are texts that are for healthcare professionals. This is right. They're not often dialogue. So when we use dialogue, it's more in listening, and it's when we listen perhaps to a conversation. But you're all right in that it's for healthcare professionals. So we can find in Reading B workplace texts. So the type of text you might read during your working day at a clinic or at a hospital. And some examples we have, you may find emails or memos or manuals or procedure documents, but they are all workplace texts and the kind of thing you might read during your working day, but not the kind of text that you share with a patient. Okay. So our next question, question 4, that some of you have answered already. How long, so how much time should you spend on Reading B? Remember, you have 45 minutes for B and C. So how much time is it good to spend on Reading B? Okay. Okay, so we've got a variety of answers from between 5 minutes and 15 minutes. So the more you practice Reading B, the more idea you will have as to how long it takes you. But a recommended amount of time is about 10 to 12 minutes, about 2 minutes per question. You might find that perhaps some questions are you find easier than others, so you might spend a little bit less time, but about 2 minutes per question. So it's really important in parts B and C to have a clear idea of your time management so that you have enough time to answer the questions from part B and then move on to part C. And finally, question 5, what reading skills are tested in Reading B? So those of you who are familiar with the reading paper, you'll know that Reading A tests your ability to skim and to scan for information. What about Reading B? Okay, so we've got quite a few ideas coming through here. So we've got a few of your ideas. We've got the main purpose. We've got understanding the text. Absolutely, understanding the text is always important. We've got main purpose, gist, and keywords. So the keywords is a strategy to help you find the answer. But the skills that are tested in Reading B are your ability to read for the gist or the main idea, read for the main point, or read for detail. So this is what is being examined in Reading B, your ability to read for these main 3 main reading skills. Okay, so let's go over the format of the exam and review. So the exam format for Part B. As we've discussed, you will have 6 short texts. Each text has a question, so there are 6 questions, and each of these questions have the same format. They are all 3-option multiple choice questions. The texts are short, as we've seen, 100 to 150 words. They are dense and information heavy, so they contain a lot of information in those 100 to 150 words, and they are based on practical issues and procedures in the workplace. When you go into the exam, Part B will begin with the following instructions. So it's always good to be familiar with the format of the exam so that you know what to expect. And if we read this a little bit more carefully, notice there are 6 short texts or extracts. So this means they may be whole text or they may be a shorter extract from a longer document, and they are all relating to the work of healthcare professionals. As we've seen and as we've discussed, the text could be perhaps policy documents. You could have memos or emails, and you may have manuals, so medical equipment manuals, for example. So let's have a look at your approach. So it's always a good idea to have clear steps and strategies for exam day to help produce your exam day nerves and strategies that you can apply to all different topics that may come up in Reading B. So in Reading B, the first thing that is recommended that you do is you read the question to understand the context. You underline keywords in the question and the options. Now, remember, the keywords are words that are going to help you to find the answer quickly and efficiently, but you're not always scanning for synonyms, direct synonyms and paraphrasing of individual words. Remember, Reading B is about the main purpose and the main idea. Then you should read the text and look out for links to the options A, B, and C. Be careful of distractors. So those of you who are familiar with multiple choice questions, distractors are answers that look like they could be correct, but when you read more carefully, you discover that they're not actually the correct answer. Answers in Reading B may require you to infer meaning. So this means they may require you to understand the main idea of the text and draw some conclusions. So let's do an example together. We're going to have one example together, and then there's one question for you to practice and you to try out. So going back to our steps, the first thing we need to do is look at the question and understand the question. So here we can see that we're looking at a manual, and the manual is for a blood pressure monitor. Then we look at the options and underline our keywords. So something that is helpful for you to do when you're training for Reading B is to underline the keywords and then rephrase this information in your own words, either by making notes or by doing this in your head to make sure that you have understood the question. So the idea is you do this when you're doing your training, and then when it comes to exam day, this is all automated and you can do it quickly. So option A is likely to interfere. We can rephrase this and think it means it will probably affect. Operation of other medical equipment, how other equipment works. B, we have may not work correctly, will possibly not function properly, in close proximity to other devices, near other equipment. And then C, should be considered safe. We can rephrase as you can assume that it's safe. All hospital environments is everywhere in the hospital. So we have rephrased our question. We've thought about the answer. Then you need to read through the text and look out for links. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to read through the text and think about which answer you think is correct. There's no need to write your answers in the chat this time. Just have a think. Okay, so let's have a look. So our correct answer is B. So let's look at why. We look in the text and we find this information. This may result in the incorrect operation. And care should be taken to avoid the use of the monitor within 7 meters. So we've got near other equipment. So we have may not work correctly, incorrect operation, near other equipment, and we've got the other equipment, cell phones and other devices. So then in your training, it's also a really good idea to notice why the other options are not correct. So if we look at A, we can see that we come back to the same place and we're looking at, this is where your grammar knowledge is important. This may result in the incorrect operation of the medical device. The medical device is referring back to the blood pressure monitor, not other medical equipment. Therefore, option A is not correct. Then we come to C, and we're looking for it's safe to use everywhere in the hospital. So we come back to the same part of the text, unsafe situation. So we can assume that it's not safe to use. And then we look for information everywhere in the hospital. And here we said we look and we find we should avoid within 7 meters of certain places in the hospital. So it's not everywhere in the hospital. So it's very important you look at why the other answers are not correct. Okay, so let's have a look at another question. So this time it's your turn. So let's go through the first few steps together, and then I will give you some time to answer the question. So remember, our first step, we read the question to understand the context. You underline keywords in the questions and the options. So here, our question, we have changes in the way that tramadol was prescribed meant that. So here we know by looking at the question, we need to look for what are the results of the changes in the way tramadol was prescribed. So then we look at the options. So in A, we have more restrictions. In B, we have it can no longer be prescribed under Schedule 3. And C, we're looking at the format of the quantities and prescriptions have changed. Okay. So then your next step is to read the text and look out for links to the options and be careful of distractors. So we've had a look at these first 2 steps together. Now it's your turn to look at the next step yourself. So here are our keywords underlined. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds or so. I'd like you to read through the text on the screen and think about what you think the correct answer is. And then we're going to launch a poll to decide, and you can vote for which answer you think is correct. Okay, so keep thinking about what your answer is, and I'm going to launch the poll. So look at the text and then decide which answer you think is correct, A, B, or C, and then choose your answer in the poll, which you should be able to see on the screen now. Okay, so choose your answer in the poll. I can see quite a lot of you are voting, which is great. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll and I'm going to share the results. So as you can see, the majority of people have chosen A. Okay, great. So let's have a look at the answer and discuss those answers together. So you were correct. So the answer is A. There were more restrictions put in place regarding the drug. So we have a look at the text and we look at why this is correct. So we're looking for information. So here we find this is what the change is going to be. And then we're looking for more restrictions. So we can find the first restriction valid for 28 days, another restriction, the total quantity should not exceed 30 days. You can't prescribe on batch repeated dispensing prescriptions, and another change another restriction cannot be prescribed using EPS. So these details support this answer that there were more restrictions put in place regarding the drug. So let's have a look at why the other answers are not correct. So we have a look at B, could no longer be prescribed under Schedule 3. So we look for information on Schedule 3 and prescribing, and we see that it cannot be prescribed using the electronic prescription service, but that's not exactly the same meaning as it could no longer be prescribed. And C, format of the quantities in prescription changed. Here, this is information, but it's not telling us that it's a change. So it may be the same information. So we're missing that information that tells us that it's a change. Okay. So our top tips for reading B. Make sure you read the question and you read the context first. Notice the difference between the options by looking at the keywords and rephrasing or paraphrasing the options in your head to make sure you've understood. Read the text quickly to find links to the options. Be careful of distractors, answers that look like they could be right, but make sure you're noticing and reading carefully. And practice reading policies on websites and instruction manuals, or if you're working in an English-speaking environment, look for notices around the hospital or memos to help practice with this type of reading. And with exam training, make sure that you build up your skills. So you need to build up your ability to notice these differences and read the text quickly and build up your speed for this so that when you come to the exam, you can spend 1.5 to 2 minutes per question. But to begin with, it might take you a little bit longer to practice these skills until you're ready. So time for questions. So please use the question and answer function to write down your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. Okay, so remember to put your questions in the question answer, but we do have a question here on the chat. Is somebody's asking if you can get the previous lesson. Yes, absolutely. If you go to our YouTube channel, then you'll be able to see the previous live sessions that we've run so far, and you'll be able to review it there. as well as today's live lesson that will be published as well. Okay. Okay, so thank you for coming, everyone. Okay, we have one question. So one question, how to improve your reading speed? So how can you improve your ability to read quickly? There are lots of different ways for you to help improve your reading speed. One of the main keys to reading is to read as much as possible and to read as regularly as possible. So you should set aside time to read every day. So it's a good idea to perhaps set aside 20 minutes or 30 minutes each day, if possible, at the same time each day, and just get familiar with reading as much as you can, getting familiar with text structure, getting familiar with the types of text you'll be reading and genres that you'll be reading. And that's one way to really improve your reading speed. Then there are some other strategies that you can use as well. So you can improve your skim reading skills by making sure that you move your eyes quickly through a text, thinking about the direction in which your eyes are moving. So to read quickly, you need to move down the page rather than reading word by word and line by line. Another way to improve your reading speed is to get used to recognizing which are the important words that will give you meaning. Okay. So we have another question. Can OET results be combined? The answer to that depends on what you're using your OET results for. For example, if you are registering with the Nursing Midwifery Council in the UK, you can combine 2 certificates, but it really depends on where you're going. So we'd advise you to check the specific country or health board where you want to use your OET results. Okay. Okay, so thank you for coming, everyone. It's been great having you here. Don't forget to register for our next free live lesson, which is on Thursday. And the topic will be Listening B, and we'll be looking at tips and strategies. So the link will be in the chat for you to register. If you've loved this live lesson, we're going to be giving them weekly. So please stay tuned to our social media channels and our social media platforms. You can find the links to these in the chat box, and we'll be announcing the different live lessons each week via these platforms. If you are preparing for your OET, we have the perfect course for you. So we have Reach OET B Nursing, Reach OET B Medicine. These are online courses designed to help you understand the format of the OET exam and to give you practice in each of the different papers, as well as useful vocabulary and grammar structures that you need for the exam. We also have the OET Writing Correction Service, where you can get feedback on your writing. And we have a brand new OET practice test, which will help you with your time management and give you an idea of your progress in terms of your OET readiness. The links will be listed in the chat, but if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us on inquiries@specialistlanguagecourses.com, or you can go to our webpage, specialistlanguagecourses.com, and use the chat function. Okay, that's it from me. Have a lovely day. Bye.